Hi there, this is Teri from Stamping Magic. Welcome back to my channel. Today's project is this beautiful diamond easel card. It measures 6 inches square. Now this card is not a quick card to produce. If you want to replicate it exactly, then bear in mind that the stamping and colouring and cutting out of all the elements took me almost an hour to do. I do think it's well worth the effort though. It's an absolutely gorgeous card. I used the Free as a Bird stamp set for all the stamping and decorative elements, and I also used some of the Bird Ballad papers. Inside, when you open it up, there's a big panel where you can write your message. Now this card, when folded, will fit into a normal size envelope for a 6x6 card, but I think I would probably create a box for it instead. And at the end of this video I'll provide a link to another video that shows you how to create a box for this size card. Okay, so let's get started. These are all the measurements you need for the various elements required to create this project. So if you're interested in reproducing it, you can take a screenshot and refer to it later. Now this project does require a card base measuring 12 inches by 6 inches. Now I'm using basic black today, and Stampin' Up don't currently sell 12 by 12 card in basic black, so I'm going to make my own card base. So if you haven't got the particular colour you want in 12 by 12 cardstock, this will show you how to create your own card base just using standard size card. I've cut 2 basic black mats from my standard cardstock. One measures 6 inches by 6 inches, the other measures 6.5 inches by 6 inches. And this one I'm going to place in my Simply scoreboard, and I'm going to score down at 6 inches. Now I'm going to trim the side edges of that 1/2 inch tab just by slant cutting each end, and then I can fold it on the score line and burnish with my bone folder. Then all you need to do is add glue to that 1/2 inch tab, position the other piece on top of it and press down, and you've got your card base. Now you do have that join line inside, but once your card is decorated, no one will notice it. The same with the join on the spine of the card. It just won't be noticed. If you look at my original card, you wouldn't notice that seam at all because that message panel covers most of it anyway. The same with the spine. It's just invisible. You don't see it. Okay, back to the Simply scoreboard. You want to place your card into the board with the longer side across the top and then score down at 3 inches. Now if you're using 12 by 6 card, you also want to put that score in at 6 inches. But if you've made your own card base, that's not necessary because you've already got a score there. Now it doesn't matter which side your join is facing when you do your scoring, it makes no difference. I'm now going to mark the card so that cutting my diamond shape is made a little easier. And you want to mark at 3 inches on each short end. So just make a press mark with your embossing stylus. And then you want to mark the side edges at 3 inches. This is on the side that hasn't got the score line. That 3 inch score line will act as your mark anyway. So you've got the 3 inch point marked on each of the panels on all of the sides, either with the score line or you've just made them with your stylus. To make the points on the front of the card and the base of the card, all we need to do is cut the corners off. And we're going to cut them off between the marks that we've just made. So I'm using my guillotine. I prefer it to a trimmer, but you can use a trimmer. So I'm lining up the blade with the 3-inch point on the short edge and the 3-inch mark that we've made with our stylus, or on the other end the 3-inch score line. So you're just taking off the corners at those points. Now you can fold on that 3-inch score line and burnish it with your bone folder. Now if you read the measurements I gave you at the start of this video, you will see that you need another basic black mat, and this is a square. Now this will go onto the front of the card, and this will provide the upright for our decorative panel. So the glue only goes onto the front triangle section. Now you want to line this up exactly with the card base underneath and make sure all the edges meet. And that's your card base complete. Everything else we're going to do is just purely for decoration. This is the Free as a Bird stamp set. We're going to use all of the images in this set today, as well as the Hello sentiment. I'll be using Memento Tuxedo Black ink for all the stamping. The colouring will be with the Stamping Blends alcohol markers. So first of all, I'm going to stamp my bird image onto a large Whisper White panel, and this will die cut later. Now I'm going to stamp the inside panel, and all I need to stamp are the 2 leaf images. Now I'm going to use my Stamp-A-Magic handle to do this. It's just quicker than getting the Stamper Artist out and stamping with that. Now Stampin' Up no longer sell the Stamp-A-Magic, but you can purchase them from places like Amazon as well as other craft sites. But any stamp positioner would do, or you can just go freehand. So I've got my imaging sheet, which is a plastic sheet. I'm going to add my handle to the top left position, ink up my stamp and stamp the image onto the plastic. Now I can take that plastic sheet and position the image on it where I want my stamped image to be on my cardstock. And once I'm happy with the placement, I just hold it in place and position the handle back on that top left corner. Then I can ink up my stamp again, position it into the handle, slide it down and stamp on my cardstock. Now I'm going to position the leaf a second time. So using my imaging sheet, I work out where I want it to be. And again, when I'm happy, I can hold it in place, add my handle, remove the sheet without disturbing that cardstock underneath, and then stamp my image again. Now I will add a link in the top right of the screen to another video that explains about the Stamp-A-Magic and gives hints and tips on using it if you're interested. I'm just going to stamp my sentiment onto a scrap of Whisper White card, and this I'll just cut out by hand later on. I thought I would quickly show you how I coloured the flowers that I used on this card, because there was lots of them. I didn't do anything very precise, it was very quick. I'm using Pool Party and Old Olive Stamping Blends markers, which are alcohol based. I'm adding the light Pool Party on all of the petals, but I'm leaving some white space at the top of them. Then I'm switching to the dark Pool Party, and I'm just adding this right at the bottom of each of the petals. And then I'll quickly blend again using the light. And a very similar process for the Old Olive. I'm filling in all the leaves with the light, adding a little dark and then blending with the light again. I'm now going to colour both of the main panels. If you don't want to watch this, I'll add a time skip in so you can skip it if you want to. So starting with the message panel, I'm going to colour the leaves, and again I'm using Old Olive. And basically it's the same process. I'm using the light marker first of all and filling in each of the leaves. And then I'm going to use the dark marker and just add some depth. And basically all I do here is go over the lines that are part of the image itself before finally switching back to the light marker and blending. Now I did go outside the lines, obviously I was rushing too much, so I'm using my colour lifter to push that ink back inside the black line. And sometimes you have to do this in stages, so allow it to dry and then repeat. And then finally I'm using the light soft suede marker for the stems. For the main panel I'm also using soft suede, so I'm using the light marker to fill in the branch completely, and then I'm going to use the dark marker to go over all the little lines in the image of the branch and also add some more at the bottom of the branch, and then blend everything together with the light again. For the flowers I'm using Pool Party, so the light first of all and just adding a little towards the centre, and then I'm putting the dark right in the centre, and finally blending with the light, so it's all the same process. Now for colouring the little birds, I'm starting with light crumb cake, and I'm just adding this mainly on their heads and around the outside of their bodies. Then I'm switching to the dark and I'm adding this wherever, well mainly wherever there's a little dark line that's part of the image. Then I can switch back to the light crumb cake and just blend those two tones together. I'm now going to add some light petal pink on their tummies, and I'm leaving some white space here just in the centre. So I'm going over the edges of my crumb cake, and that will help the blend as well. Then I'm switching to the dark petal pink and I'm adding this around the outside edges of the light petal pink before blending them both together with the light again. Then to blend that white space into their tummies and into the petal pink, I'm using the colour lifter. I used the dark So Saffron marker for the beaks. I coloured the leaves in exactly the same way as I coloured the other ones earlier, and then I went around the whole image with my light Pool Party marker, and this really makes it pop and it's worth doing. This will now be cut out using one of the stitched nested label dies, and it's one down from the largest. I used the same dies, the largest one, to cut out a black mat, and then one size up from the smallest to cut out a white mat, and one size up again from that to cut out another black mat. Now when you layer these die cuts together, you'll see that you don't get an even border all the way round. Around the pointed ends it's wider than around the top and bottom edges. And this is the same for the smaller ones as well. so it's wider around the points. Now I'm going to change this so that you get an even border all the way round, as on my original card, and I'll show you how to do this for both mats. This is the actual die I used to cut out this mat, so it's the largest in the set, and I want to reduce its size. So all I have to do is line up the point of the die with the point of the die cut, and if I ran that through again, that would reduce the size and make it a more even border. If I want it to be more precise, then I need to bring that point down just a little bit more, so you can see a touch of the black cardstock peeking above the point. And then I'm going to run it through my Big Shot, but only to recut that pointed bit. I don't want to run it through all the way. Now when I layer these together now, you can see that the border is much more even all the way round. And then I can do exactly the same thing for my smaller die. They all work in the same way. And again, don't run it through all the way, just run it through far enough to cut that point. Okay, so you'll see from the measurement screen that was at the beginning of the video that you have two small squares, one of cardstock, Pool Party, and one of the Designer Series paper. And these are going to be used to create the corner sections on the inside of the card. All you need to do with these is cut them in half diagonally, and then they can be layered together. I can now start to add all the decorative panels to this card. Now if you've used a paper that has a pattern orientation, so it's a one-way design, decide which way you want to stick it onto your card base before you add the glue. Okay, obviously you don't want your pattern upside down, but there might be a couple of other options. So decide the best one, and then what I do is place a mark so I know where to position it after I've added my glue. Then you can add your glue. I always like to use wet glue, but you can use tape adhesive, and then set it in position. And this one is for the front of the card. Now for the base of the card, you've got your two triangles and you've got another square panel. So again, add your glue and then position these. These are the various elements you need to complete your card. You need 8 leaf sections, 6 large flowers, 5 buds, 3 single leaves, so I stamped a ninth one and cut these off of it, and then you also need 9 small flowers. For the message panel, you'll need one of the large flowers with a dimensional on the back, one of the single leaves, and 2 of the buds. So I'm going to glue the single leaf into position first of all, and that's going into the corner. Then I can add my flower, and finally my 2 buds. This can now be added to the inside of your card. You can also add the other panel of the same size to the back of the card. You want to add dimensionals to the reverse of your image panel. Then you can remove the backings and position this onto the center of the front panel of your card. I've already cut around the sentiment and added dimensionals to it, so you can remove the backs and then position this onto the image panel. I'm also going to add one of the bird ballad trinkets to the front panel, and I'm going to position this using a glue dot. These are the elements you need to decorate the front of the card. First of all, you want one large flower. I've attached 2 of the single leaves to it and added a dimensional to the back. Then you want 2 of the sets of leaves, and these I've stuck together just overlapping the stems a little bit. And I'm going to glue these to the top of the card, just under the point. Then I've another large flower with a dimensional on the back. I can add that. And 2 of the smaller flowers will be glued flat. And then I can position the bottom flower. Now to decorate the top corners on the inside of the card. Now I have 2 sets of leaves, a large flower, a bud and 2 of the smaller leaves for each side. I've joined the leaves together again, overlapping the stems, but not as much as I did on the front of the card, so they're a little longer. You just need to be careful that that top leaf does not go over the fold line of the card. So the leaves will be glued flat. Then I'll add my flower, my large flower, and then the smaller flowers will be glued flat, as will the bud. Now the other corner section is decorated in exactly the same way. I'm now going to create the little stopper panel for the card. Now these are the elements you need. I've got 2 sets of leaves, again glued together, so overlapping slightly. Then 1 large flower, and this is the only one that will be glued flat, all the others had dimensionals on the back. 3 smaller flowers, a bud, and then my large bird. And I've coloured this one in exactly the same way as I did the little ones, so with crumb cake and petal pink. So the leaves will be glued flat, as will the large flower this time. Then I have dimensionals on the back of the bird. So I'll remove the backings and position him next. and the remaining flowers will all be glued flat as well. So I'm going to position the 3 small flowers first of all. And then finally the little bud. And that's this little fella complete. Now you can position him wherever you want him, so wherever you want the stop to be is entirely up to you. I prefer to put them at the bottom of the card, and I do apologise here because I'm still zoomed in, I didn't realise. So I'm just going to remove the backings from the dimensionals and then position him right down towards the bottom point. And you can see him more clearly here. Now the final thing I've got to do is just to add basic rhinestones to all my flowers. So I'm using the smallest of my rhinestones for the smaller flowers and then slightly bigger ones for the larger flowers. And that's it, the card is now complete. Now I did go ahead and add some mini dimensionals under these leaves to support them. I think I must have made the leaves longer for this card than my original card. But I'm really pleased with this, it's a beautiful card. It's not difficult, it's just quite involved with how I've designed it. There's an awful lot of fussy cutting. And here is my original card again. Now the only real difference between the two is the pool party border that you can see. On my original card this is wider than on my new card. If you prefer the look of the wider border, then just reduce the size of your papers by about 1/8 of an inch or 3 mil. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Bye for now.